Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Billy Embody. Appreciate you guys being here with us on this Thursday. We've had a lot of news hit the site on recruiting, on SMU basketball, all of those things. But now it's time to begin previewing fall camp and go position by position. And we've jumped out with the quarterback preview already. We did the defensive line preview that dropped this morning. Or should be up by the time you're listening to this. But now I kind of want to go offense, defense in a bunch of preview podcasts leading up to fall camp. And I wanted to lead off with one quarterback, but two defensive line, because I would argue defensive line is one of those positions that, took probably the biggest step on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll talk about Preston Stone and Kevin Henry-Jennings and all those quarterbacks SMU has. We'll also look in depth at the defensive line on this edition of the podcast. Quick note before we get going, though, SMU is awaiting a decision from four-star Duncanville safety Kadavian Dodson-Walker, who is set to announce his decision this weekend. We will be tracking that one, of course, at ontheponyexpress.com, so don't miss out. Jump on the Pony Express for $10 a month and join us. This is the time. Recruiting is continuing to heat up with some key prospects set to make decisions. You also have fall camp, and you would, if you subscribe today, you'd get the first few days of fall camp for that first month for just $10. So you can kind of see how you like it as fall camp begins if you're a podcast listener and don't check out on theponyexpress.com. Before we get to the quarterback side of things, I want to talk to you guys about Big Game USA. The official football of SMU. Preston Stone designed it himself in terms of the laces, where he wants them, how he wants, the stitching to go, because you can get kind of custom stitching right here. But they're made right in Addison by a company that's been doing it for a long time, friends of ontheponyexpress.com, and you can get a official SMU football, or really whatever college you want to pick from on the site. If you have friends, family that might be fans of other teams that Big Game makes their football for, you can order and use promo code BEON3 and get 10% off your full order and free shipping. So check them out, Big Game USA, the official football maker for the SMU Mustangs. This would be pretty cool to throw around the boulevard, I think. So now, speaking of throwing it around the boulevard, Preston Stone hasn't done much of that on the boulevard, I don't think, maybe in his offseason here and there. But what he's really done is come in to SMU, put his head down for 2 years, and now it's his time to take over as the starting quarterback for SMU. Preston Stone, a highly touted prospect coming out of high school, where he started Dallas Parish Episcopal. He was a top 150 overall prospect, top 15 quarterback nationally on the On3 industry ranking. Well, now goes to SMU, spends his first 2 years as the backup to Tanner Mordecai. He was pretty close at certain points to really maybe getting the tap on the shoulder, but Tanner Mordecai held him off. Preston Stone did get opportunities here and there, especially this past season. He was able to get his first start under his belt going into Tulsa, but that was when his season was ended early with an injury to his collarbone, and he missed the rest of the season. And now, after going through all of spring, fully healthy, ready to go from day one of spring, it's now his time to take over the quarterback position. And when I look at what he has on paper, completed 28 of 48 passes for 388 yards and 2 touchdowns while adding 14 carries for 63 yards and 2 more scores. He almost led that comeback against Cincinnati, but fell just short. He's got the ability to extend plays. He was top 25 in terms of yards per attempt, which is a really good indicator overall. Granted, he played everywhere from against North Texas and Lamar to against Cincinnati, Tulsa, programs like that. He is going to come in and have incredibly high expectations to deal with as a first-year starter. If you think about what the expectations were for Tanner Mordecai when he came in, yeah, he played some at OU. Yes, he was transferring down to an SMU, but in reality, he didn't necessarily have a highly touted resume to come back and sit back on and really elevate the expectation level for SMU coming off Shane Buechele. After the last 2 years for SMU and what they've been able to add in the portal and what they've got coming in terms of the AAC schedule they're going to face, all expectations are for Preston Stone this year to be the guy, but not only be the guy, but lead SMU to a conference championship game appearance, which would be the first in quite some time. I think just over 10 years, I believe. So SMU has surrounded Preston Stone with all the tools he needs to be successful. And I think he'll be successful. The biggest question we have is how quickly will he be successful? Because he's played now in a bunch of environments where you expect him to handle just about anything. He's played in blowouts. He as cleanup duty. He's come in at the end of games and come in when Tanner Mordecai got pulled against Tulsa in Sonny Dykes' final game. You also have where he almost led that comeback against Cincinnati, a 2-point try away from forcing overtime. And he goes into Tulsa against one of the top secondaries in all of college football in terms of statistically allowing passing yardages, and those for over 200 yards in about a quarter and a half before getting hurt. He's kind of done a little bit of everything so far for SMU, but he's coming into a position where he absolutely has to win now. And look, we're not going to talk about Pac-12 realignment or college football realignment in general, but SMU needs Preston Stone to deliver. He's an SMU legacy. The storybook is waiting to be written for Preston Stone when it comes to what he can do for SMU football long term. Shane Buechele elevated the program. I believe Tanner Mordecai elevated the program. The expectations can't be higher, really, in terms of what SMU fans are expecting going into the season. You couple the transfer portal haul with some of the key guys they have coming back. And the big question is, how quickly can Preston Stone deliver? And that's what we're going to be watching for. Because, yes, Louisiana Tech, who comes in and will probably be a pesky team, quite honestly. But SMU's favored by about 17 points last I looked. And then you go on the road to Norman. You get a game you should be fine with against Prairie View A&M. And then you go to TCU. Preston Stone's legacy isn't going to be written in those two major Power 5 out-of-conference games. His legacy could get off to a really hot start if he wins one of two or wins both. And let me be very clear. I think SMU has the talent, and I think they have the scheme, and I think they have the quarterback to win those games if things go the right way for themselves. But like we saw against Cincinnati when Preston Stone came in, he finished 6 of 15. Nothing to write home about. It was kind of windy. He got an interception called back for a push-off. And I do think it's one of those things where you saw him have success against Tulsa and you say, that's where he can really bring it. And you see what he can do with his legs, both against UCF and mop-up duty, as well as against Cincinnati. I thought he did a good job extending plays and things like that. And he also ran well against Tulsa, but ultimately he got hurt running on a keeper. And I just want to see the overall consistency improve. He's a guy that has the tools to do it. And if he trusts himself and continues to kind of play the way he has when he's been given opportunities, I think he's got the ability to take this team far. I like the way he manages the football. Look, he's taking his shots down the field. And if you're going to take a shot down the field, and especially if it's a third down shot, I'm okay with it being picked off. It's like a punt. If it doesn't get, caught by an SMU receiver, we'll take the interception in that respect. And I think most coaches would tell you that. I do want to see his ability to throw the football down the field in terms of how quickly he gets it out improve. I think that'll come. Quite honestly, I saw it improve over the course of spring. And I think being smart about how to run with the football and get down and not bite off more than you could chew and things like that is going to be critical for him. But what is ultimately going to determine how we really view Preston Stone this year, at least, is can he lead them to that conference championship game. And I believe that SMU can get there, and Preston Stone's going to be the one to lead them there. And it'd be a really cool story for all that to happen. And the kid that grew up just right down the street from SMU, who's an SMU legacy, who's got all these ties to stay home and do what he did as a 4-star prospect. This is his time. Preston Stone has had enough experience where SMU's coaching staff has pushed the chips in on him. And they said, we're going to trust you and you're going to be our guy. And he's got to deliver. And that's the reality of it. And I think he's got that talent. I do. And it's just a matter of putting it all together. We've seen what SMU's added through the transfer portal. The expectations now are for Preston Stone to capitalize on them. And I think he will. Now, while it is Preston Stone's turn to be QB1, SMU does have a very capable backup in Kevin Henry Jennings. He came in as a true freshman, did a terrific job in the areas he was asked to come in. You look at that drive he had against Memphis before the half, where he ate about 6.5 minutes and got a touchdown and all of those things. What he did against Tulsa when Preston Stone went down, when Tanner Mordecai was still in concussion protocol. He just has that kind of it factor. He completed 17 of 22 passes, so 77% completion percentage, 205 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions on the year. In terms of rushing, he also added 5 carries for 8 yards. So nothing really crazy there on that front. But also when he was in the game, SMU had to be really careful with him, so they couldn't run him for the most part. But he's bulked up. He's added some size, and he's a very, very capable passer. Now, I think in the spring, we saw, at least from my opinion, Kevin Jennings kind of hit a wall at times. There would be practices that he was awesome and on it. There were others that he'd force things. And I think his arm, as it has gotten stronger, he's wanted to really try and fit some passes in some tight windows. And you could see the ball jumps off his hand. If you're watching on YouTube here, you see this pass to Roger Daniels and things like that. But he's got to know when to either check it down or just take the safe play and things like that, because opposing defenses, they'll make you pay. And SMU is in a good position with Preston Stone being the starter and Kevin Jennings being the backup. And that's the important thing here. Now, Rhett Lashley's staff is used to playing multiple quarterbacks due to injuries, which is a good thing in terms of how they manage it. And that's why they went out and got Alex Padilla, who can be a really nice insurance piece. But when you look at those three, if you see all three of them play this season, you would think as an SMU fan, you're hoping for that blowout. And it's Preston Stone's turn to be QB1 at SMU. And I think the future is really, really bright for him as he really could play out these next 3 seasons. It's pretty wild to think about. After he redshirted in 2021, played a little bit in 2022. Now it's his time to be the starter for a kid who, could very well be the next great one. If he puts it together, it's going to be pretty wild to see that come together for this SMU offense. So a lot of pressure on Preston Stone, but I think he's ready for it. And I think we're going to see SMU's move to him as the starter pay off in the 2023 season. As we look at the quarterback preview position, though, for this season overall, and especially fall camp, you've got those 3 quarterbacks, the veterans. You got Preston Stone, Kevin Jennings, who played a lot of football for SMU. You also have Alex Padilla, who transferred in as an former Iowa quarterback, who's coming in as an insurance policy. He's not somebody that you're expecting a lot of. And then they also bring in Keldrick Luster, who the staff really likes, a 5'11", kind of built like a truck quarterback who really emerged at McKinney in that pro-style offense after absolutely kind of putting up video game-like numbers at Frisco Lone Star. Goes over to McKinney for his senior season. A little bit more pro-style attack, very much ground and pound, but they were still able. The one game I think I went to of Keldrick Luster's was this game against Braswell, and I want to say the final score was like 65-57 or something like that. and McKinney won, and they were able to take it. So they had some big plays in that game. I think they might have had an interception or something returned for a touchdown, but Keldrick Luster was able to orchestrate that offense, and it's a pro-style attack. He's played in different schemes. He's able to run the football. He's able to extend plays. He's got the arm strength, but he also doesn't have to do anything this year. I think he's going to redshirt. I think that's the right move for him. And then he can start competing even more or whatever as his time at SMU goes on. So you're looking at a quarterback position that in fall camp should be pretty drama-free overall. You're going to have Preston Stone. You have Kevin Jennings, who's really going to be pushing him hard. But Preston Stone is your starting quarterback at SMU. And then you have Alex Padilla, the insurance policy, who's going to help bring along Keldrick Luster. So Johnny Brewer has a good quarterback room, a group that's pretty tight, close-knit. And the expectations for Preston Stone are very, very high. So we'll see if he can piece it together this fall for the Mustangs. You turn over to the defensive line position, our first piece of the defensive side of our position preview series on the podcast. And I just look at what they brought in from the standpoint of the two Miami transfers, Elijah Roberts and Jordan Miller. Elijah Roberts, not as decorated in a sense as Jordan Miller, played in 8 games, 1 start last year, 9 tackles, 1 sack. And then you look at Jordan Miller, played in 12 games last year, 18 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a sack. He's played in over 40 college football games since getting to college in 2018. That's right. So he redshirted his first year, played in 13 games, and then COVID year, played in 11, junior year, played in 11, senior year in 2022, played in 12. So this season will be his last of college football. Whereas Elijah Roberts, he came in and used his COVID year in 2020 right off the jump. He's got 2 seasons left to play, 3 years left to play 2 seasons of college football. And the exciting thing about Elijah Roberts is I think he's just scratching the surface. And I wanted to lead off with Elijah Roberts, first of all, because I to kind of preview this spot, you can go end to end in a way. So I think he's going to be your starting strong side defensive end. And we're really focusing on the 3 down linemen when it comes to this position preview. So I do want to mention that we're not going to be talking about the jack position. We're going to talk about them on Monday when the next round of the podcast comes, when we do the running backs and the jacks. But that's why we can lead off with Elijah Roberts. And I think he's your starter at strong side defensive end. I think when you look at what he brought to the table in the spring, he really surprised a lot of people. And the big thing with him is he's got the ability to play maybe defensive tackle if he wants to as well. But he played so well out on the edge, a little bit more athletic even than they probably thought. And I think that's a big, big deal for this coaching staff to have a guy that they brought in and they didn't necessarily, I don't think, viewed him as like a surefire starter, but I just got to believe he's SMU's starting defensive end this year. He was that good. And then that allows you to play Jordan Miller, obviously at nose, the big man, about 315, 330 pounds. And he looked good in offseason workouts. But then you get into, all right, well, where does Devere Levelston and Elijah Chapman slide in? Well, I think Devere Levelston is your defensive tackle. And then you can have Elijah Chapman, who's also going to play a little H-back this year, be fresh, be kind of moved around a little bit, play a little bit of offense, be a factor in that regard, but then also play that defensive tackle position, maybe a little bit of nose. And I think you're sitting pretty there in that respect. Now, another question is going to be, what's the pecking order behind all of those guys? And when you have 3 players in their final season, Devere Levelston, Elijah Chapman, Jordan Miller, it makes it intriguing what to do, because right there, that could be a really good starting down group. And I think we'll see moments where we could see all 3 of them on the field. We could even see those 3 and then Elijah Roberts at the jack position, which I don't think they're going to do much of, in my opinion, at least, because of the other guys at the jack position, but we'll talk about that later. What's coming behind this group of 4 that I've really kind of honed in on is a lot of players that can probably emerge as contributors, but you all also have what I would say is a question about each. You have Stephon Wright, who when Stephon Wright plays, I think there's a case that when he's playing and he's healthy, the last year or so, he's been the best SMU defensive lineman. I mean, that's my opinion. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Transferred in 2021, didn't play in any games. Now, the good thing for him is because he was hurt that year, realistically, he could probably get a medical. So that puts him as having, but let's just say he's just still on track or whatever. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining as this year and next. But if he got a medical for 2021, that's 3 years. Granted, he might want to move on to the NFL if all goes well. But still, five games last year, 15 tackles, 8 of which were solo, 1.5 tackles for loss, and a half sack. Also added an interception and a quarterback hurry. And he was in and out of the lineup overall. He wasn't able to stay healthy. It was different things at different times. But if they can get him to stay healthy, I think he is a surefire, like first, maybe second guy off the bench in terms of interior defensive lineman for SMU this season. He's that talented. He's that good. Now the other question becomes, all right, well, you have Mike Johan Sandro-Njiki, who's kind of the fire hydrant, like a Terrence Newman-ish, but he's probably not as talented as Terrence is. Especially, even before Terrence's injury, but he's somebody that's a plug, and he'll probably get, if he's around that 5 snaps a game, 5-10 maybe, that's probably okay on the nose tackle position. And then you have Corey Roberson, who comes in from Oklahoma, who Calvin Thibodeau is very familiar with. He didn't play at all for OU last year, which is pretty wild just to think about overall. But in 2021 was when Calvin Thibodeau was still in Norman. Played in 12 games, made 17 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a half sack. That was coming off of 10 games with 4 starts in 2020, where he made 11 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, a sack, and a PBU. He played in 4 games while redshirting in 2019 as a true freshman. So how can SMU get him back to form is the big question. He did arrive this summer. He is with the program. I think if you can get something out of him, then you're looking at it. Now you have a 2 deep in a sense, because you have 4 that you feel real good about. You have Stephon Wright, who when healthy, you feel good about. Then you have Corey Robertson, you feel good about because he knows Calvin Thibodeau and they kind of know how they operate. You have Mike Johan Sandro-Njiki, you know exactly what you're getting with him. But then the X factors kind of become, all right, where does David Abiara fit in? He's probably a strong side defensive end. So he's behind Elijah Roberts. Great. Awesome. But you need to see more out of David Abiara than you did last year. He wasn't as consistent enough. He kind of broke out in that game against USF, but he only played in 2 games overall. Made 1 tackle. I think the other game he played in was against BYU. I could be wrong on that. But you get those guys in. But Braden Flowers, before he got hurt in spring, he was kind of pushing and impressing. He's probably about 6'2.5", around 250 pounds. And he'll have the ability to put on a little bit of weight. But now you have Kevin Allen, who comes in from Everman as a 2023 signee, who's a Tom Landry Award finalist. He could push at the defensive tackle or maybe nose tackle position. Then you have Damian Wimberly. I think he's a strong side defensive end, but he's a developmental guy. If they can bring out that talent, maybe he's a guy that sees the field right away. But they've got to get him in the weight room. He was a July enrollee. And, maybe expectations for him should be to just kind of learn and see how it goes with some of the talent they have at this position and then be raring to go in 2024. But I mean, honestly, Braylon Jackson is somebody that hasn't shown much. Dylan Frazier, I'm still high on. He was kind of nipping on the rotation when it came to the end of last year. He's now a redshirt freshman. I like him a lot. I think he's got some tools. You've got around 11 defensive linemen that you really probably, like overall. And so I'm intrigued to see how the rotation kind of behind the main group settles itself, because you do have a lot of guys who have some talent and some ability. So The good thing for Calvin Thibodeau is he's got more depth and talent combined than what he had last year. And SMU was just kind of stacking it up this offseason for him. So with that, guys, that is really the position preview. I think when you look at the depth chart side of things, we'll kind of run that down a little bit later on this month for our premium members. But that was pretty much the gist of it overall. But it's a really crazy time to look at the defensive line depth and see where it is, and if it's healthy, that'll really help the back two levels of the defense with the linebackers, safeties, secondary, and the corners. They've got some size. They should be able to free up some other people to make plays at the very least, which is a big step forward for this defense. So I think expectations wise, you want to see them very much free that group up, let them make plays, and really improve what was a porous run defense at times. And just overall, I mean, they added a lot of length, they added a lot of talent, and I think they've got to really turn the corner. And I think it'll start with the defensive line this year. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this position preview podcast. We've knocked out quarterbacks and defensive line. We will talk running backs and the jack position next week. We'll throw in some other podcasts as necessary as well, but want to get you guys all set and ready to go for fall camp. So with that, hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Again, just $10 a month to sign up for ontheponyexpress.com. I'll be down in Houston this weekend, so be sure to let me know if you're in the Houston area, and we can catch up about some SMU football. I'll be down there for the Texas Coaches Convention. Also, July 25th at Katy Trail Ice House Outpost in Plano. In the evening, we're having our get-together a little bit after happy hour, about 6 o'clock. We'll be over there and wanting to do, a little fall camp preview. We'll be fresh off AAC Media Day, which is the 24th and 25th. Who knows? Maybe Pac-12 realignment news. We'll see. But it's all on the table. So whether you're a subscriber or not to the site, come through, come hang out, meet some fellow SMU fans, and look forward to seeing you guys there. So spread the word about it. If you are a subscriber or whatever, bring some friends who maybe aren't. And if they join the site, you can get comped a free month for bringing on a new member. So with that, guys, hope you enjoyed this edition of the podcast. Keep an eye out. Kadavian Dotson Walker, the 4-star safety out of Duncanville, set to announce his decision on Friday, most likely. We'll be tracking that at ontheponyexpress.com. So thanks for listening. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.